Welcome to Automation's official design competition. In this video you are joining us for the finals of Category F, the 1980s till 2000s JDM Sports Coupes and Sedans. Your hosts Chris and Rob are joined by today's very special guest and judge Shinyodd. He's a prominent Automation and BeamNG streamer with a large community on Twitch and YouTube. He's known for his wacky humour, his great automation build skills and car knowledge, as well as for being a lover of all things JDM. For those of you who would like to see a more in-depth analysis of the finalist designs as well as an interview with our special guest, join us for our roundtable discussion in our next video. But for now, 12 cars out of the 71 entries have made it through the pre-selection process and into these finals. Let's get into it. Era appropriate at first glance, with great back and solid front. Unfortunately, there is very little tying it together across these endless plains of purple. Could have been more detailed.
It's fairly inoffensive and suitable for the design brief, however it leaves a little bit to be desired in terms of smaller details that could add some more weight to the design, particularly on the sides, and perhaps further separate it from its real-world counterpart, although I am a big fan of the taillights particularly, as they are very aesthetically pleasing.
This entry is generally quite a fun little thing, with a very nicely done front end, but the rear unfortunately doesn't really match the rest of the car, and I'm really not 100% sure that I like the lettering down the sides and on the rear. It just doesn't quite feel right.
Overall, it definitely stood out to me, and I'm sure the designer knew that it would. It's a very creative take on the idea, and it's executed in an interesting way. I wasn't quite as keen on the rear end as much as the rest, particularly the shape of the taillights, but overall, the appearance is still very solid, and I do very much like it.
There's a lot of car here with great overall presence, almost a little sluggish due to its size. The strong consistent lines do help it massively to pull off that look though. Nicely made with just the right amount of detail.
Definitely has to be one of my favourites. You can just tell how much effort has went into moulding the car into the shape that it is, and yet it doesn't just look like a pile of random fixtures dumped on a car for the sake of it. I'm a big fan of designs like this on Automation, and this one has definitely caught my eye right away as a result.
East meets west in this rally-inspired coupe. Handsome lines and very strong proportions and generally harmonious design make this an absolutely excellent entry here.
I do admittedly find the design a little ugly, but in a very cool way. I like this very much. The designer clearly wanted to stand out and be different, and they did exactly that. And I must give them props for using this older body in a new and creative way.
Clean and understated, yet still very sporty, this is exactly the kind of car that you would see sliding off of a gravel road at tremendous speed at any time during the 1990s.
If you had to ask me which car had the most believable, realistic design here, it would probably have to be this one. They just did such a good job at incorporating all the body's natural lines in their design. It mightn't be the most exciting, but it fits the brief perfectly, and it almost looks real.
This looks so nimble and fun, I'm sure it could do about 3.5 donuts around your daily before you even can react. Incredibly tasteful stroke on that body trim all around the car with a super consistent look. Superb.
This little car is absolutely perfect. It's just a goofy little pocket-sized sports car that puts a big smile on your face. I love its tiny little wheels, and the consistency and design from back to front is spot on. I could definitely believe this design being a real car, and I very much want one.
The front end of this design is very nice, and I like the black roof, but unfortunately this design really isn't very consistent from front to rear, and I really don't like what's going on in the rear with the taillights especially.
The mid-engine Japanese sports car look is captured very well with this body shape choice. However, I do feel it just lacks a little bit of original flair in the details. It does very closely resemble its real-world counterpart, and I think just a few creative additions on top could definitely take it to another level.
super weird and creative, but missing the mark in aesthetics in a way that just makes it not work for me. Less transparent windows would have helped balance its look, and it is consistent in that it is odd looking from all angles.
Right out of the box, I must admit I'm not a big fan of the wheels. They do feel a little out of place. But with that out of the way, the design itself actually does a great job at turning a rather generic body shape into something rather original and unique. And I like that about it. It's just something a little bit different.
This is a very muscular and very strong looking sports car. It's got all the right shapes and all the right style and cues that just make me want to put this into my driveway more than any of the other finalists in the field.
This is a car that stands out the minute you see it. I can see a lot of creatively used body molding fixtures to make the car look less flat and generic, and I like that very much. The only thing I will say is the front end does rather closely resemble its real-world inspiration, maybe a little too closely, perhaps costing it a couple of points in originality, but ultimately does nothing to harm its very eye-catching design.
A front design with interesting headlight and vent shapes, solid simplicity along the sides where more framing could have done well, and the rear, a little messy.
A very similar concept to the previous car, but executed in a completely different way, and a very interesting way at that. I particularly love the front end. I can tell just how much effort they put into making all of it blend together in the way that it does. I like that very much. Not sure about the taillights though, but they aren't necessarily inappropriate, and overall, the more I looked at it, the more I ended up liking it.
This design starts out fairly nicely at the front, but as you move around to the rear of it, inconsistencies start coming up, and the almost unforgivable miscue of having different levels of the side molding really take away from an otherwise very handsome compact coupe.
Admittedly, this car didn't strike me as particularly sporty, although I definitely don't dislike it, and I highly rate the colour choice. It does look excellent. The headlights are very weird, but in a very cool way, and the taillights are very well made too. I think I would personally add some kind of subtle body kit to really sell the fact that it intends to be a sporty coupe, but there's still something in the simplicity here that pleases me. It's a very visually interesting car.
Intriguing head and taillight designs on an oddly empty looking but rather elegant and pretty car. It doesn't have much going on, but what is there is rather quite tasteful. I like it, but it doesn't wow me.
Now this entry is rather extraordinary, isn't it? So fantastically simple and yet so eye-grabbing at the same time. I'm impressed, although I do feel some of the features such as the headlights and taillights maybe use a little too modern of a design language compared to the car they're sitting on. But nevertheless, there's a beauty to its simplicity.
And there we have it. Big congratulations goes to Dr. Doom Discord for the winning design, to Kevelatite Potato for second place, and to Cargath for a close third place. For a more in-depth analysis of today's finalists, as well as an interview with our special guest, join us for our roundtable discussion in the next video. Also, subscribe to the channel and check out the competition playlist to not miss any of the fantastic and questionable designs that we showcase. Let us know what you thought of the featured designs in the comments below, and visit the Automation Game Instagram channel, where you can vote for your favorite finalist in our story.